You're listening to the Retro Mo Podcast. I'm your host, Mo, and I love to play and review old video games and a few new games too. If you prefer to read instead of listen, check out my written reviews at retromo.substack.com. In this episode, I'll be sharing my experience with Kirby's Dream Land 2 for the Game Boy, released in 1995. I've scored this game 8 out of 10, a great game. A surprising amount of gameplay depth makes this a top Game Boy title. I had never played this game until recently, and to be fully honest, I had pretty low expectations. I'm not a fan of Shimomuro's other Kirby games, Dream Land 3 and Kirby 64, but Dream Land 2 is clearly the exception. This is easily Shimomuro's best Kirby title, and really the only entry in the Dark Matter trilogy that I fully enjoyed. Visually, I wasn't super impressed with some of the bland, empty backgrounds in Dream Land 2. Sakurai's Dream Land 1 has some very detailed backgrounds in some sections. However, it may have been a design choice to simplify the backgrounds in order to reduce visual noise. There's only so many pixels available on a Game Boy screen. Otherwise, the sprites and their animations looked very good. You can tell this HAL team has become very comfortable developing for the Game Boy at this point. The gameplay is really where this title shines. After the introduction of copy abilities in Kirby's Adventure, the pressure was on for Shimomuro's team, but they delivered. Even though there are only 8 copy abilities in Dream Land 2 compared to 25 abilities in Kirby's Adventure, each ability interacts uniquely with each of the new animal companions introduced in Dream Land 2. Rick the hamster, Kain the sunfish, and Ku the owl. So, with the ability variations provided by the companions, there are really 32 unique attack varieties. This is very impressive for a Game Boy title. Again, like Dream Land 1, there's virtually no in-game story until you reach the brief cutscenes at the end of the game. There is, however, some brief context provided in the game manual. Dream Land 2 introduces Dark Matter as a new recurring antagonist to be featured in all 3 of Shimomuro's Kirby games. I did find the Dream Land 2 soundtrack to be on the weaker side. The Game Boy was so limited in processing power, it could be very difficult to program meaningful music that could coexist with an effective array of sound effects. Jun Ishikawa nailed the Dream Land 1 soundtrack, but he was busy with other projects during Dream Land 2's development. Ando and Ikegami produced a functional soundtrack, but it's definitely missing Ishikawa's magic touch. Shimomuro would move on to direct Dream Land 3 for the SNES and Kirby 64, adding even more ability combos and variations, but Dream Land 2 remains the best of the 3 for one very important reason. Kirby and his companions actually have adequate move speed. For whatever reason, they absolutely tanked Kirby's move speed in Dream Land 3 and Kirby 64. Those games feel sluggish, restricting, and frankly, boring at times. But Dream Land 2 is the exception, and it's a worthy playthrough for any impassioned Kirby fans. Thanks for listening to the Retro Mo Podcast. As always, I do my best to keep all of my content spoiler-free and rated E for everyone. If you find this podcast enjoyable or helpful, tell a friend, and consider giving a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. If you have questions or comments, you can send an email to retromopodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Godspeed.